February 1952. Forward operating base near the 38th parallel. Chaplain Robert Morrison has a problem. He's received 47 letters in the past week, all from families back home, all asking the same question. Why haven't we heard from our son in 3 months? Morrison knows why. Mail service is terrible. Letters get lost. Soldiers are too exhausted to write. Some don't know what to say. How do you describe this war to people who aren't here? But Morrison also knows what these families are experiencing. Silence. The worst kind of silence. Not knowing if their sons are alive, wounded, or dead, just waiting. Morrison makes a decision. He's going to write to these families himself. Not official casualty notifications. Personal letters. Telling them their sons are alive, what they're doing, how they're holding up. It's not his job. Chaplains don't write personal correspondence on behalf of soldiers. But Morrison doesn't care. These families need to hear something, anything. He sits at his typewriter and starts. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, I'm writing to let you know that your son James is doing well. I saw him yesterday. He asked me to tell you he's healthy and thinking of you. Simple, honest. Morrison sends it, then he writes another, and another. Over the next 3 weeks, Morrison writes 83 letters to families. Word spreads among the soldiers. The chaplain is writing home for guys who can't or won't write themselves. Soldiers start approaching Morrison. Chaplain, can you write to my parents? Tell them I'm okay. Morrison says yes, every time. By April 1952, Morrison is writing 30 to 40 letters per week. He's spending 4 to 5 hours per day at his typewriter. It's cutting into his other duties. Counseling soldiers, conducting services, visiting the wounded. His commanding officer notices. Chaplain, what's going on? You're behind on your reports. Morrison explains about the letters. The Co. is skeptical. That's not your responsibility. Soldiers need to write their own letters. Morrison, sir, they're not writing. Their families are suffering. I can help. The Co. doesn't officially approve, but he doesn't stop Morrison either. So Morrison keeps writing. Between February and December 1952, Chaplain Robert Morrison writes approximately 3,000 letters to families back home. Not official communications. Personal updates from a chaplain who's taking time to tell families their sons are alive and thinking of them. The Army finds out in January 1953. Someone at division headquarters notices that one chaplain is sending an unusual volume of mail. They investigate. They discover Morrison's operation, and they're not happy. The problem: Morrison is writing letters that could be construed as official communications. He's a uniformed chaplain writing on behalf of the Army. If he makes a mistake, if he tells a family their son is fine and then the son gets killed the next day, the Army looks bad. Morrison is called to division headquarters. A colonel explains the problem. Chaplain, you're creating liability. What if you tell a family their son is healthy and he dies the next day? What if you accidentally reveal classified information about troop movements? Morrison, sir, I'm careful. I only report what families need to know. Their sons are alive and thinking of them. Nothing operational. The colonel, that's not the point. You're not authorized to send personal correspondence on behalf of soldiers. Stop immediately. Morrison asks, what about the families who aren't hearing from their sons? Who tells them? The colonel, that's not your problem. Soldiers are responsible for their own correspondence. Morrison returns to his base, and he keeps writing. He's more careful now. He doesn't use official stationery. He types on plain paper, signs as Chaplain Morrison without rank insignia. He makes it clear these are personal letters, not official Army communications. But he doesn't stop. By July 1953, when the armistice is signed, Morrison has written an estimated 3,200 letters. Some families received 1 letter. Others received 5 or 6 over the course of the year, updating them as their sons moved between units or got wounded and recovered. After the war, Morrison expects to face disciplinary action. He violated a direct order to stop writing, but nothing happens. The war is over. The Army has bigger issues. Morrison is transferred stateside, assigned to a base in Georgia. He serves out his career without incident, retires in 1968 as a lieutenant colonel. He never talks about the letters publicly, but the families remember. In 1978, Morrison receives a letter from a woman in Ohio. She writes, You wrote to my parents in 1952 about my brother. He was killed 3 weeks after your letter arrived. Your letter was the last word they received that he was alive and thinking of them. It meant everything. Thank you. Morrison is moved. He'd never thought about the families who received his letters before their sons were killed. How his words might have been the last comfort they received. More letters arrive over the years. Families tracked him down decades later to say thank you. In 1985, a man visits Morrison at his home in Virginia. The man is in his 50s, he says. You wrote to my mother in 1952. I was in Korea. I wasn't writing home because I didn't know what to say. Your letter told her I was alive. She kept it until she died. I found it in her belongings. I wanted to meet you and say thank you. Morrison and the man talk for hours. The man explains, I felt guilty for years that I didn't write more, but your letters helped. My mother knew I was thinking of her even when I couldn't put it into words. Morrison realizes something. His letters didn't just comfort families. They relieved guilt for soldiers who couldn't write. By 1995, Morrison has received about 200 responses from families or veterans, all thanking him for the letters. He's kept them in a box. When a military historian hears about this, he asks Morrison if he can see the correspondence. Morrison agrees. The historian is amazed. Here's documentary evidence of 3,200 personal letters sent by one chaplain violating orders to comfort families during the Korean War. The historian asks, Did you keep copies of the letters you sent? Morrison shakes his head. No, I just wrote them and sent them. I didn't think they were historically important. The historian, they're important because they show what one person can do when they decide rules matter less than people. Morrison, I just did what seemed right. Families needed to hear from someone. I was someone. Simple as that. Robert Morrison dies in 2006. He's 84 years old. His obituary mentions his military service, his work as a chaplain, his retirement in Virginia. It doesn't mention the 3,200 letters, but at his funeral, 14 people attend who have no connection to his family. They're veterans or family members of veterans. They're there because of the letters. One woman, now in her 70s, tells Morrison's children, Your father wrote to my parents in 1952. My brother came home safely. But during those months of silence before your father's letters, my parents were suffering. His words gave them hope. I wanted to thank him. Morrison's daughter is surprised. She'd known her father served in Korea. She didn't know about the letters. The veterans and family members tell her stories about the comfort the letters provided, about how Morrison's words bridged the gap between soldiers who couldn't express themselves and families who desperately needed to hear something. One veteran says, Your father understood something. War makes communication hard, not just physically with bad mail service. Emotionally, you see things you can't explain, you feel things you can't describe, so you stop trying, you stop writing, and your family suffers. Your father fixed that. He wrote what we couldn't. Here's what Chaplain Robert Morrison's story teaches us. First, that sometimes the most important work is the work nobody asks you to do. Morrison wasn't ordered to write those letters. He saw a need and filled it. Second, that rules exist for reasons, but reasons can be wrong. The Army said Morrison shouldn't write personal letters. The Army was wrong. The letters mattered more than the regulation. Third, that small acts multiply. Morrison wrote 3,200 letters. Each letter reached a family. Some families had multiple children serving. Each letter was shared with extended family. The impact was far larger than 3,200 people. Fourth, that we don't always see the impact of what we do. Morrison wrote letters and moved on. 30 years later, he learned how much they mattered. And fifth, that humanity matters more than procedure. Morrison chose people over protocols. He was right. Remember Chaplain Robert Morrison, the man with the typewriter. The 3,200 letters that broke every rule, and the comfort he provided to families who just needed to know their sons were alive and thinking of them. That's ministry. That's service. That's what matters. Not the rank or the position or the official duties, but the choice to help when you see a need, even when nobody tells you to. Morrison understood that, and 3,200 families are grateful he did.